Hi everyone. Today we are breaking down a victim's triangle in just under 7 minutes. The victim's triangle, also known as a drama triangle, is a psychological concept that explains the roles people play in conflict, first described in 1968 by Stephen Karpman. It consists of 3 roles. Each role, victim, rescuer, and persecutor, creates unhealthy dynamics in relationships and prevents true emotional growth. Let's start with the victim role. This person feels helpless, oppressed, and powerless, often believing they have no control over the situation. Core belief? My life is hard and unfair. Poor me. Now, while there are real victims, people who have genuinely suffered harm or injustice, such as a child being bullied at school or someone losing their job unfairly, there are also those who play the role of a victim. What does that mean? It's when someone constantly positions themselves as helpless or wronged. Why do people play the victim? People often play the victim for various psychological reasons, usually rooted in past experiences and learned behavior. Here are a few reasons. Number 1, avoiding responsibility. Playing the victim can be a way to avoid solving the problem. Instead, they lean into helplessness, seeking sympathy and maintaining dependency. 2, validation. Let's face it, people tend to rally around someone who appears to be struggling, making the victim feel validated and important. 3, identity. After playing the victim for so long, it becomes a part of who they are. They may not even realize they're doing it. And 4, manipulation. It is always about gaining control through manipulation. When people play this role, they aren't engaging in genuine relationships. There's always an underlying motive. Now, let's move on to the rescuer role. That's who steps in to save the victim without being asked. Core belief? I have to help because people need me. The rescuer thrives on the sense of being needed, often overextending themselves to solve others' problems. Now, while helping others can be positive, rescuers do so to avoid dealing with their own issues. This constant need to save others allows them to feel superior and validated. Why do people play the rescuer? Number 1, avoiding personal problems. By focusing on others' issues, they don't have to confront their own. 2, self-worth. Being the rescuer gives them a sense of importance and validation, often leading them to take on more than they can handle. And 3, control. Rescuers often take control of situations, imposing solutions instead of allowing others to grow or solve problems themselves. This makes relationships dependent and prevents others from learning self-reliance. And finally, we have the persecutor role. The persecutor is the one blamed for the victim's suffering, often uses anger or aggression to assert dominance. Core belief? It's your fault. You need to be punished. Persecutors feel the need to maintain control and superiority by putting others down or blaming them for problems. Their approach is harsh, and they often see themselves as always right, leaving little room for empathy or understanding. Why do people play the persecutor? Number 1, power and control. Persecutors dominate others to maintain a sense of control and superiority. 2, projection. Often, persecutors project their own insecurities and shortcomings onto others, attacking them instead of addressing their issues. And 3, lack of accountability. By blaming others, persecutors avoid taking responsibility for their own part in conflicts, which perpetuates the cycle of negativity. Shifting roles. Another thing that's really important to recognize about this triangle is that people do not stay in one role forever. A victim might become a persecutor, blaming others aggressively, or a rescuer, trying to save someone else to feel better about themselves. The role can change, but they are all a part of the same destructive cycle. It is a dynamic, ever-changing dance, emotionally draining for everyone involved. Now, let's talk about the so-called starting gate. This is when someone enters the triangle, usually as a victim. This idea of the starting gate is a concept that is important to understand when talking about the drama triangle. We tend to have this one role that we most naturally enter into. So, for instance, you know that one person might often go straight to the victim role, whereas someone else might jump into the rescuer role. As I said before, we shift from one role to the other. But inevitably, we all end up in the victim role, feeling powerless and helpless and unable to do anything. And that's why it is really important to work out strategies for how to get out of this triangle. So, how can we break free from this cycle? For the victim, take a step back and ask yourself, am I seeking a solution or just sympathy? Shift your focus to problem solving and personal growth. If you're playing the victim intentionally, it's time to stop. You are depriving yourself of personal growth. For the rescuer, you need to think of yourself as a mentor rather than a rescuer. Do not jump into it without being asked. Practice your emotional intelligence to quote-unquote read the room. Set boundaries around the time that you can listen and help the person. And for the persecutor, instead of blaming, criticizing, or attacking others, shift your focus to understanding and cooperation. All right, everyone, we've given you a general outlook of the victim's triangle, but if you're interested in learning how it plays out in specific areas like parent-child dynamics, personal relationships, or professional settings, stay tuned for part 2. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss it. Catch you later.